Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you are watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines this hour. US President Donald Trump has now arrived in Tokyo, where Japanese Emperor is set to greet him. After signing multiple agreements in Malaysia during his Asia tour, Trump is set to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping in South Korea on Thursday, while Japan prepares to announce new investments and defence commitments. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer will meet Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in Ankara to discuss the sale of 40 Eurofighter Typhoon jets, including a plan for Turkey to receive 12 used jets from Qatar and Oman. The deal, backed by Eurofighter consortium members Britain, Germany, Italy and Spain, comes as Ankara aims to strengthen its air power and regional competition with Israel. The UN calls for an immediate ceasefire in El Fasher, warning that civilians are cut off from food, healthcare and safe escape routes as fighting intensifies. Aid agencies say targeted attacks on hospitals and humanitarian workers are deepening the crisis. Now, as President Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio depart the ASEAN summit for Japan, China's top envoys join leaders from Brazil, Canada, the European Union and ASEAN to advance new economic partnerships and trade agreements. US President Donald Trump says he expects the United States and China to, quote, come away with a deal as he prepares to meet President Xi Jinping in South Korea this week. Speaking aboard Air Force One, Trump says he has a lot of respect for President Xi as he continues his Asia tour. Venezuela accuses Trinidad and Tobago of staging a military provocation with the CIA during joint exercises in the Caribbean, claiming mercenaries were caught planning a false flag attack to trigger a full confrontation with Caracas. Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva says US President Donald Trump assured him a trade agreement can be reached to ease punitive tariffs. Lula spoke after meeting Trump on the sidelines of a Southeast Asian summit. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has urged Myanmar's military to end the deplorable violence since the 2021 coup and restore a credible path to civilian rule while speaking at the summit in Kuala Lumpur. Guterres has warned that the military takeover angers regional stability. Now, we start this hour with our top story, where US President Donald Trump says that the announcement by his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, of a nuclear-powered cruise missile test was not appropriate. Trump said that Putin should focus on ending the war in Ukraine, arguing that a conflict which should have taken 1 week was now approaching its 4th year. Speaking to journalists aboard Air Force One, he added that Putin ought to end the war instead of testing missiles. This comes as Putin on Sunday announced the successful final test of the Bushyanevsky missile, which he said has unlimited range. Trump had promised to quickly end the Ukraine war upon his return to the White House in January, but talks between Moscow and Kyiv had stalled despite the US president's mediation efforts. Now we're joined by our guest, Matti Zweig. He is a geopolitical expert and he joins us live from Israel. Matti, nice to talk to you on this topic. Of course, US President Donald Trump was pitted to, of course, solve this war in 24 hours. It's now been over 6 months since he has been in charge, and growing frustrations seem to be looming. Of course, those sanctions have been imposed on Moscow's 2 largest crude companies, and now Putin has unveiled a new missile. What do you think Donald Trump thinks about that?
Well, I think this is something that, sometimes people look the headlines And they forget that there are a parallel reality, which means the real reality that is going on. And the real reality is that Russia and all the countries, they continue with their plans of doing new weapons and trying to have a better position, militarily speaking, in the future. And that's what they did. They continue developing things. The war between Ukraine and Russia didn't finish. And it's very, really astonishing that they continue to develop such a big weapons that big, like this very Vervasti, I think it's called,
Yes.
the new robot missiles. And, you know, they also did a new jet for attacking and drones and a lot of things. Not only this. This is the big frustration for Donald Trump, of course, but so far he's not focused on stopping the war. He's more focused in other places because he sees that the Russians are just progressing on the ground and they are not willing to stop in this moment. And but for Russians also, it has been very, very heavy from the military point of view because they have been so focused in this war with Ukraine that in the last almost 4 years, it would be in February, next February, from this war, they lose a lot of things. They lose their gap in the Mediterranean. They lose Syria.
Yes.
They lose a lot of things that this is part of concentrating all their efforts and trying to win with Ukraine.
Yes, and Matti, where do you think Kiev stands right now in Donald Trump's head? Of course, he's done a lot of flip-flapping in regards to his stance. However, President Volodymyr Zelensky is still trying to get his hands on those Tomahawk missiles, long-range missiles, which only the United States can give him. Do you think that President Vladimir Putin is getting concerned that Zelensky might just do that?
In the last 10, 11 months, almost 1 year, it has been a very strange reality in this war. The Russians are winning more territories, more crossroads, more villages. I mean, they are expanding their gap in all eastern, at least in eastern Ukraine, and trying to open their path to big places that they lose before, like in Sumy, like in Odessa, like in a lot of places. And until now, mainly the Zelensky and the Ukrainians have been doing two things. One is just keeping the best they can in a counter-offensive that failed. They couldn't take and retake a lot of places from the Russians. From the other side, they are really making the Russians suffer in all kind of places that they are very far from Ukraine, like in the Rostov area, in the Crimea area. And that's what they are doing in a kind of leverage. But they are just trying to defend themselves with their weapons or with the weapons they are still receiving from Europe, despite everything, and also from the change of mind of of Trump, that he more understands now Zelensky than in the past.
Yes, Matti, do stay with us as we have some further news, but this time out of the Middle East, where the United Nations Interim Force has shot down an Israeli military drone in Lebanon during a surveillance mission on the Kila area. The Israeli Defense Forces have responded to the incident, saying that the drone posed no threat to the UN peacekeepers, but they still chose to open fire and bring it down. Meanwhile, UNIFIL has defended its move, saying that the drone flew over its patrol in an aggressive manner yesterday, and the reason why UN peacekeepers used defensive measures to neutralize it. Additionally, as per reports, the Israeli drone was downed by UNIFIL. The IDF had deployed another drone to the area yesterday, which dropped a grenade. The IDF claimed this was apparently done to prevent people from approaching the downed device. The Israeli military has also confirmed that the drone incident is now being investigated through the joint liaison channel with UNIFIL. Israel has repeatedly criticized UNIFIL over the years, stressing the peacekeeping force has failed to prevent Hezbollah from building up its presence along the border between Israel and Lebanon. Matti, of course, this stems down to further aggravation, mainly between Israel and the United Nations agencies. What more can you tell me about that?
That is something in the world that is called administrative protocol. And this is technical. I mean, it's bad. It happens because there are both sides there, Israel and Hezbollah, and UN is in the middle. But this is mainly technical and also political, because many years ago I was myself an officer in liaison with the UN in South Lebanon, and believe me that everything is very settled with the UN. Israel doesn't want to harm UN in any way. They try to get implemented on the ground what they have was saying the UN that must do. It means to forbid any rearm or any building of the force of Hezbollah south of the river Litani. And that's what Israel is trying to do for themselves or in cooperation with the central Lebanese army, not with the government, but with the army. And from the other side, of course, they have implementing all the bureaucracy that we have between Israel and the UN. They must avoid any harm to them. And it's sometimes depending on the people on the field. But of course, no one wants to escalate this. And the big question is, like you say, very good. At the beginning, where was UNIFIL all these years? Why it didn't prevent Hezbollah from reinforcing themselves in the south of Litani? Why they permit them to build tunnels and to build bases of all kinds of drones and missiles and everything, and they didn't fail to prevent this, which was their aim task. So always there is not the perfect relation between Israel and the UNIFIL, but they have a mechanism that make them avoid all the problems, and I hope they continue to work on it.
Yes, Matti Zaweg, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. Always a pleasure to get your insight on these topics. We now move on over to Asia once again, where the United States President Donald Trump has said that he would love to meet the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un during his current Asia trip. Kim Jong-un said that he would be open to meeting the president if Washington drops its demand that Pyongyang give up its nuclear arsenal. Meanwhile, Trump has arrived in Japan for the next leg of the Asia tour that could see Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping to end the bruising trade war between the world's largest economies. Trump is set to arrive in the South Korean city of Busan on Wednesday, ahead of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, where he will meet South Korean President Lee Jae-myung. South Korean reunification minister has stated that there is a considerable chance that Trump and Kim will meet. Trump has reacted to the situation. Let's listen in to what he had to say.
On your way here, have you heard anything back from
I haven't mentioned it. I haven't said anything, but I'd love to meet with him if he'd like to meet. I got along great with Kim Jong-un. I liked him. He liked me. If he wants to meet, I'll be in South Korea.
Would you extend your trip in order to try to meet
Say it.
Kim? Would you extend your trip in Asia in order to meet with him?
Well, I hadn't thought of it, but I think the answer would be, yeah, I would do that, sure.
We're now joined by Rubinder Sachdev. He's an international affairs expert and he joins us live from New Delhi. Rubinder, it's always a pleasure to get your voice on these issues. Is this possible, a Kim Jong-un, Donald Trump meeting this week?
It could be possible, and more than possible, it is probable. Let's say possible is anything in this world, right? But what is the probability? So yes, there does seem to be some probability happening. And in fact, I'm very much looking at it because you see what this would mean. Trump is trying to peel away North Korea from Russia also, and from China also. So if Trump and North Korea end up with some kind of a peace agreement or some kind of an agreement, which creates a thaw, let's say, in a way, that will help America to little bit try and rope in North Korea from helping Russia too much in the Ukraine war. So that's one grand objective also, I think, of Trump in kind of pursuing and looking forward to the meeting if it could happen. The last time some attempts were made was, I remember, around the Winter Youth Olympics. In fact, I was involved in it, peace between North and South Korea. But then the South Korean president lost the elections, and the new one who came in is much more a hardliner. So far, relations between North and South are very much, rhetorical and hard and harsh. So if Trump can, bring about some progress on that, I think that would be one key objective. One should very clearly look forward to, because this whole Asia trip for Trump is turning out to be a very strategic trip.
Yes, and of course, Donald Trump has said multiple times about how much he gets on well with Kim Jong-un. What does he admire about him?
Trump, not only about Kim Jong, Trump admires people whom he thinks are smart, hard, aggressive, decision makers, successful in that big bunch, right? So within his country, yes, Kim is successful. He's the one in power. Okay. The same way, if you were to look at the Pakistan Field Marshal Asim Munir, Trump appreciates him. He says it openly because he sees that guy strong decision maker. Putin, strong decision maker. Trump has an affinity for people who are strong, successful, decision makers in whichever world they may be, in the world of good or in the world of bad. And he wants to have a one-on-one interaction, and quote unquote, the word deal has been overused, but yes, to make deals with the counterpart. So Trump respects strength.
Yes, Rabinda, do stay with us. We have further updates from, of course, President Donald Trump, where he said that he expects to decide on next week's Federal Reserve Chair by the end of the year. He stated that maybe by the end of the year we'll make a decision on the Fed. Meanwhile, the US Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, has said that we are going to do a second round and we hope to present a good slate to the president right after Thanksgiving. Bessent stated that the pool of candidates have been narrowed to 5, including Trump's aide, Kevin Hassett, former Fed Governor Kevin Warsh, current Fed Governor Christopher Waller, Fed Vice Chair for Supervision Michelle Baumann, and BlackRock executive Rick Ryder. Rabinda, what impact will this make on the American public? Who the president nominates for the Fed chair? Of course, Jerome Powell is the current chair of the Federal Reserve, a man who he himself nominated, but now has a very, very public disagreement with about inflation.
No, absolutely, yes. And the last sentence which you mentioned is the core which Trump wants. Trump wants the Fed to lower the interest rates. Firstly, Trump wants to, in a way, control or dictate the Fed. The Fed typically is an autonomous agency, you could say, and the president should have no role, no interventionist role in the policies of the Federal Reserve, right? Trump wants that not to be so. He wants that the Fed, in a way, should report to the president, right? One. And secondly, then what he wants is that the Fed should lower the interest rates. And that's been a struggle. I mean, essentially, the struggle is always between, in a way, interest rates and inflation. But Trump also wants the Fed to lower the interest rates so that the stock markets can go up. Trump wants the stock markets to show up well and high because that's a metric he uses when he talks. That stock market was there when I came, and in 1 year, this is where the stock market is. Now, if the interest rates are higher, then typically stock markets, they go their own natural, trajectory. But if interest rates are lower, then, companies can borrow more, they have to pay out less interest, and the treasury bonds become less attractive for investors, so they go more towards the stock markets. So Trump wants the stock markets to be on the high, interest rates to be low. That's one key aspect that he wants the Fed to bow to his will. The other aspect is of inflation. For inflation, Trump's formula so far was and is that prices of oil should stay low. But now with sanctions on China and India for buying Russian oil, if these two countries stop buying Russian oil, the world price of oil will go up because there'll be slight shortfall in the world production, so to say. So if oil goes up, that's not good news for Trump. That is why he is also chasing oil deals across the world. And especially with Russia, he would want that the Ukraine conflict get over so that American and Russian companies can collaborate for oil production. You heard him say the other day that our sanctions on Lukoil and Rosneft are there till the war, and after the war, these companies should be back in good business.
Just briefly, Rupinder, Besant says that the pool has been narrowed down to 5 candidates, 4 of which have experience within the Fed. One, however, is a BlackRock executive. His name is Rick Ryder. Donald Trump has a track record of hiring people with untraditional backgrounds in these government positions. What would be your view of nominating someone with a background of this kind?
No, very interesting too. I mean, if you see Trump's current cabinet, his Commerce Secretary was heading a hedge fund, Lutnick. Besant was heading another fund and hedge fund or such institutions. So Trump seems to have a liking for, individuals who are professionals, of course, and who have operating and running an executive experience. So in that sense, the BlackRock candidate could be a natural choice for Trump, perhaps, unless it's someone more that Trump wants from an ideological bent, then he would go with one of the regulator kinds who align perfectly with the MAGA and his vision. That would be one. But on the other hand, having somebody with an entrepreneurial background, let's put it that way, is something I think which Trump normally goes with.
Yes, Rupinder Sachdev, it's always a pleasure to talk to you on these issues. Thank you for taking the time and joining us. We stay in North America for our next story, where Prime Minister Mark Carney has met Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim on the sidelines of the ASEAN Summit in Kuala Lumpur. Both leaders have discussed expanding bilateral cooperation in trade, education and energy sectors. During the meeting, Anwar Ibrahim has expressed his gratitude for Canada's partnership while emphasising the strong performance of petrol, gas and trade. Carney has reciprocated the sentiment. He has highlighted that Canada intends to deepen ties with Malaysia in areas of energy, education and aerospace. He also commended Anwar's commitment to peace and multilateralism in relation to ASEAN's enlargement and the resolution of the Cambodia-Thailand border dispute. Let's in fact listen in to what the leaders had to say.
Appreciated many friendship and defense of justice and freedom. But on our trade and investments, other than of course Petronas, we're doing extremely well. Thank you again. We're very happy. We get last week's report. It's doing extremely well, but I think we should expand to more areas. And I know that we have other issues with some countries. I think opening up for educational opportunities, research. I visited most of the universities in Canada, speaking engagements and meetings, both in office and out of office. More out of office than in.
I say after we spoke for the first time a few months ago, I had the occasion to be in contact with Prime Minister Martin, who reiterated his esteem for you and for everything you've accomplished for this country. I share that esteem, as do Canadians, and we're fortunate to have the partnership, and a partnership that we should be growing, and I think our mutual intent is to grow it significantly. In education, all aspects of energy, we have much to discuss there, in aerospace and beyond. I would also like to take this opportunity to salute your commitments to peace, the agreement on the border dispute between Cambodia and Thailand is significant.
Australia is taking Microsoft to court, accusing the tech giant of misleading millions of customers into paying unnecessary price hikes tied to its new AI tool, Copilot. From October 2024, Microsoft automatically bundled Copilot into Microsoft 365 personal and family plans, pushing subscription prices up by as much as 45%. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission alleges 2.7 million customers were falsely led to believe they had only two choices: pay more or cancel. In reality, a cheaper Classic plan without Copilot still existed, but Microsoft only revealed it if users tried to cancel. If the court rules against Microsoft, fines could stretch into the tens of millions of dollars or even more. Microsoft says it is reviewing the claims, but insists consumer trust remains a top priority. Let's listen in to Gina Cass-Colateb, Australian Competition and Consumer Commission Chair, on the investigation.
Firstly, after a detailed investigation, we allege that Microsoft did deliberately conceal that third option because what their objective was to increase the uptake of Copilot and also to increase the revenue that could be obtained through the Copilot integrated, more expensive plan prices. We are definitely seeking, as one of our orders, that the customers and subscribers receive redress and are compensated. So that is one of the orders we're seeking. And yes, we're seeking penalties. And we're seeking penalties that do not just operate as a cost of doing business, but operate as a deterrence for the immediate company and for companies at large in terms of the need to comply with the consumer law.
Well, that is all that we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.